G'day guys, I'm AJ, and today we're going to do a review, what I think of Lion King. So this is the first Lion King movie, the original one with Simba, Nala, blah blah blah. I think you know what I'm talking about. So let's get straight into it. With this review, I'm going to be going through the story and telling you each individual bit and what I thought of it, and then at the very end, I'm going to tell you my thoughts of the movie overall, the small things that bothered me a little bit, and yeah, let's get into it. So the first scene was, of course, when all the animals come to the ceremony of Simba. For the first time I watched this, I was very confused about what was happening. They didn't really tell us that that it was like the presentation of the prince who's becoming king and like the first thing, so we had no idea what was going on, and also it was very confusing about how every single animal knew to come to this place at this time and all that stuff. It was a little bit confusing, but it still looked amazing, you know, like with all the different animals from all over Africa coming to this one big thing, and it was beautiful. But now, when I watch it, I get a little bit bored. But it's only because a lot of the animals have like no expression in this. I mean, once it gets off to where Simba is, it gets a little bit more interesting, but all the animals, there's no expression, there's nothing, so we have absolutely no context on what's happening, what they're thinking. We just get them walking a lot. So I like the idea of it, but I feel like it could have been done better. But I did like the remakes way. But I feel like it could have been done better, and it just wasn't my thing, because I like things to have expression so that I know what I'm meant to feel in that scene. Then we get the scene with Scar. It is very clear that Scar has a very sad life in this, but it's also very clear that he's not going to like be a nice person in order to change this and win them over. It's very clear of who Scar is and why. Lots of people say that it's not clear of why, but Mufasa is clearly not a good brother. He laughs at him and mocks him a bit and kind of overjudges him. Yes, Scar didn't do the right thing by not coming to the ceremony, but we ourselves don't know if Scar had a reasonable reason, and he may have, like how other people suggest that Scar used to love Sarabi and then Mufasa took him away from him. So this may have been completely unbearable from Scar to watch a ceremony like this. Or Scar could just be simply evil. And Mufasa might just have every right to mock him, because Scar might have just been a complete killer from the beginning. But I like to think of it the other way. Because I think that Scar's character has a lot of depth, and I really liked this scene to introduce Scar and Mufasa and Zazu's dynamic. It's also introduced Zazu. He was a good character, but still very annoying. Because he's annoying to the other characters, I found it very hard to like him as a character. Because he's annoying to the other characters, I found it very hard to like him as a character. They did it right in the remake, where they made him funny to us and annoying to the characters, and yet we can still understand why the characters found him annoying. But in this one, everyone just found him annoying, and I found that a little bit hard to deal with, but it still makes an enjoyable scene, definitely. And you can definitely put yourself into Scar's shoes very easily in this scene. The next scene is when Simba wakes up, and wakes up his dad, and Mufasa goes, "Everything the light touches, our kingdom." This scene I really liked. It shows how Mufasa thinks he's super wise and all that, and how Simba just wants to be king, and how he's so excited that he can be king, and he thinks he can boss his dad around and say stuff like, "You promised," and he's just like, I just love Simba as a character. Not because I think that he's a good person, he's a little bit of a brat, but he's a very enjoyable brat to watch. He's a fun character and optimistic. Despite the fact that he's a brat, he's like really enjoyable, and he has this kind of spunk to him. I really like the idea of the circle of life, but then it also shows how Mufasa actually doesn't take regard for every single animal. although he says that. He thinks that he's a great king. When it comes to things like the hyenas, let's say, nah, he ain't care about them. I mean, I guess you could argue that they aren't in his territory, but they would definitely like to be, because in his territory is food, and I don't think they'd really overhunt. I mean, if he gave them a little bit of restriction, you know, I think that he really could get this thing, because I think that this thing is almost too dominant with animals. You can kind of see that in the beginning, and I just found it really strange also that all these animals were just kind of hopping along and not going, ah, it's a lion, run, because in all perspectives, he really could just attack them. And he really could just be hunting, like it'd be so easy for Mufasa to hunt. He'd just be like, hey, I'm the king. Oh wait, I want to eat you now, goodbye. But I really enjoyed the scene. It just a lot of wisdom-y stuff from Mufasa, which isn't actually too much wisdom once you get down to it. And then we get up to the scene with Zazu. We get more of Simba and Mufasa, and how Mufasa really doesn't have that much regard for the other animals. And we see how Mufasa doesn't have that much regard for his kingdom and the other animals in it. He really just cares about the lions. And that Mufasa easily lets Simba use Zazu as like target practice thing, pouncing practice, you know. I didn't really like that bit, but it did show that these characters weren't the best people at the beginning. Best lions, I guess. And you know how it should have ended? Zazu gets like eaten by Simba, and Mufasa just laughs about it. Now, I don't really think that Mufasa would just laugh about it. That wouldn't happen. But it is actually very possible that Simba could make a mistake. I mean, he is just a cub, and like break one of Zazu's bones or something. Because, you know, this is like a big full-on cub, like jumping on top of this bird. Like, what would Mufasa do if this actually did hurt Zazu? Like, he's not a good king. He says good things, and then he does bad things, I think, is with Mufasa, which is very interesting. And no one really goes that much into depth with this, except for a little bit of Munchkin, but he's gone now. And then Mufasa gets called to take care of the hyenas. It's shown that everyone looks down at the hyenas and looks at them as poachers, which I guess they are, but like, what do you expect them to eat out of the Outlands? Like, I didn't see any food. In number 2, you can see that the other lions have termites, and it's proved that there are enough termites to get these lions that just don't really like the taste of termites and how they're really itchy. But in the elephant graveyard, there's no meat except for the meat the one time when Scar brings them meat. So that also shows that Mufasa isn't a good king. And also, when Simba didn't get to go and do something that is obviously very dangerous, and of course Simba can't go and hurt these hyenas, fight off these hyenas, because, well, they're hyenas, they're gonna be like twice his size. But he doesn't take that as obvious. He goes like, I don't get to do anything. Just because he gets told off for one small thing that's not even really getting told off by, which just shows how much of a big rat Simba is. And I just love how his character is, all their characters are just consistent throughout the movie. And then we see Simba and Scar again. We see Simba mocking Scar, doing his little laugh, and just seeing how much Scar really hates Simba, and it really makes sense that Scar wants to kill him. I mean, maybe not kill him, but it makes sense that Scar doesn't like this little guy. But it also makes sense that Simba thinks that he likes this guy, just thinks of his jokey, daggy little uncle. And it's a really interesting dynamic looking at them too, and it's just so much fun watching this movie. And seeing how Scar can like manipulate Simba and Simba just easily does exactly what Scar wants him to, even though like Scar was doing such good acting that you cannot tell. But at least Simba couldn't tell because he's a cub. We can tell because we're the audience. I think the remake took that one a bit too far. I thought it was like he should be able to tell. That shouldn't just be the audience, but in this one it was done perfectly. Scar was done absolutely perfectly. And then we get introduced to Nala. Nala is a very fun character. I love her. She's probably my favourite character in Lion King 1. She's just kind, nice, she supports her friend. I think that she knows that Simba's a bit of a show-off, but no one's telling him off for being a show-off because, like, he's the king and they all understand that, yes, he is the king. You can act like that if you want to. So, like, she doesn't see any reason to because she's a cub. She gets a bit better as she gets older, I reckon. I didn't really understand that thing about the waterhole. The waterhole? What's so good about the waterhole bit? Like, what's wrong with the waterhole? And then we get a good interaction from Nala and Simba. I don't see how the thing about them setting up the marriage and how they're betrothed is really necessary. I mean, I guess it's just like showing tradition of royalty stuff, but I didn't see how that was necessary. They could have talked about like anything at all. And I also felt like there should have been more cubs, but who knows, they could have been a hunting trip or something, which I will make videos about how I believe there were other cubs, especially according to the 6 New Adventures books. And then we get the I Just Can't Wait to Be King song, which is super Simba's character, and it's just such a fun song. You just want to dance every time you hear it, you know, and it's just so colourful, and it just, these animals do these crazy things like riding on ostriches that obviously lions don't do in real life. It's so cool. And then we get to and then Zazu gets squashed by a rhino, which would definitely kill him in real life. So, which just shows how much Simba is really abusing this little bird, and how much the mummies Serafina and Sarabi did not think about it when they were putting Zazu in charge of the cubs. Like, it would have been gone way better if a lion had gone with them. Just any older lion, even like a teenage lion, would be able to help them out. But it just shows how careless these lions are, because they think that their King Mufasa is the wisest guy and that they can do whatever with the King Mufasa. And then we see how awesome Nala is with pinning Simba, and how Simba just like, no, I have to be better than you. And it's just so funny to see Simba getting defeated, and she's like, that didn't happen. And it's just really funny. And then we finally get to the elephant graveyard, and the elephant graveyard looks so cool. It's like steamy, and you can see why these kids want to be here, because it's like looks cool, but it's also like you can tell there's not a good place. It's like there's bones everywhere, there's dirt, there's no food, as I mentioned before. And then we get Zazu coming in like, you should be dead, man. The hyenas come in and they're like ready to eat them. Like, if these hyenas weren't so playful and just, I think that these hyenas actually cared about the cubs a little bit, and that's why they were kind of teasing. And also because they knew that these two cubs, although they were their only food, that they needed to like talk about it, because it wanted to be something that they'd remember, because they never get this food, and they're just like, what is going on? Here is some cubs just wandering in, let's make some jokes about it and make some memories, and then we'll eat them. but Zazu interferes and gets them to run away. Now, first up, Zazu, you should be dead, dude. And I was pretty surprised that the hyenas didn't pretty much slaughter these two baby lions. But I was happy that they did, because, you know, they're the main protagonists. And then Mufasa comes in, saves the two lions, and then they go for their little walk, and Mufasa's like, gets angry at Simba. Well, doesn't really get angry, he's just like, you did the wrong thing, which is pretty obvious. And then Simba starts crying. I mean, I guess that would make sense because he just went through a really big and bad experience, you know, almost getting killed. And then he's just like, I did the wrong thing, this is so horrible. And so it makes sense for a kid to want to cry. But it's also like, your dad isn't even saying that many bad things. Like you did one thing wrong. But like, he's crying, but then he could be crying because of like, he thinks that his dad is like being really mean, when really his dad's just saying a normal thing. And then Simba doesn't get any punishment at all. No, like, you're getting a timeout, or no dinner for you tonight, or whatever lions do as punishments. No, they get a little rumble, a little rumble in there. Which shows again that Mufasa is not a good king, or dad, or brother, or anything at this point. But this is a very important scene because it shows that Simba knows that the kings of the past do in fact live up there, and he definitely did believe that. I was kind of like, as a kid, kind of like looking, so I was like, that doesn't make sense. I can't see any kings up there. Because like, is he saying that every individual star is a king? And then by the end of it, you know that he's not talking about that. So it's like, what? Yeah, but it was a really cool scene, and it was kind of shown as good from Simba's point of view, but then you can also see that Mufasa is still a bad king. So yeah, it's a very good scene. I like that scene. And then we get the scene where Scar like gets angry at the hyenas for like not carrying out his plan, but it kind of makes sense for the hyenas because they didn't know that it was an essential part of Scar's plan. I mean, I think Scar should have just told them, hey, I'm going to send you these cubs. 1 or 2 cubs. Scar should have just said, hey, I'm going to send you 1 or 2 cubs. Eat them straight away. Like, these guys had no preparation. When Scar gives the hyenas that bit of zebra, that was when, as a kid, I realized that he was not eating that much at all, and he was just starved, and the food that he did have, the little food they did have, he was giving to the hyenas. I mean, all he had eaten that day was 1 small mouse, and that is not enough for a lion, which makes sense. He was so skinny, and it just helps you put yourself into Scar's shoes. He is such a deep Disney character, especially for a villain. Other villains are just like, I'm gonna kill, or I'm gonna rule the world, or I'm gonna be the best. And he's not just, I'm gonna be king, and so I have to kill. He's like, he's got a reason. His brother is not nice to him. He is starved. He sees his best friends as being starved as well and wants to help them. And his nephew is a brat. Everyone looks down at him because his brother is the king. And he looks down at him, so everyone just does that too. And it just gives him so much depth. And I love that about Scar. About how he is evil, he is a bad guy. But at the same time, we can still step into his shoes and still understand what's going on inside his head. You know, it's almost as good as Thanos. Yeah. If you really do think about him, then yeah, you can see his point of view. And I really like that about Scar. So, I don't know how I feel about the hyenas, to tell the truth. They're really like young-minded and super jokey, and it doesn't go for their advantage. Like, maybe that's like them being angry, but like instead of being angry, they're like a little bit crazy. But I mean, that's very possible. But then like Scar's also starving and he just goes very drained. And I like how Scar is just really angry at them and they're just like, hee hee hee, this is normal for us. And then the song, Be Prepared, starts. It's just all dramatic and cool, and all the green gas comes out, and it's like so cool, and there's like a whole rock movement, like an earthquake thing. I don't know what those things are called. Comment down below if you know. And it's just such a cool, dramatic scene, and everything about that song and that scene is amazing. I loved it. And then we get to the scene before the stampede attack. This one was kind of a little cringy, but the line's like, it's to die for, and stuff like that. I mean, first that line was all smart, but now it gets kind of cringy. And it's kind of like, and it's very interesting about like, and again we get to see Simba and Scar together and their dynamic, and I like that. I don't know why. We just see Simba doing his little pouty face whenever Scar like mentions that the pride knows that he like almost got killed. Just like, oh really? And then we get a little scene where the like hyenas are like, I want to get a bite of these things, and which totally makes sense because they're so hungry, and that they really showed that they're really hungry in that scene. I felt really sorry for them that they didn't get any food that day, because we didn't see them eat anything that day, and they tried so hard. They were just carrying out Scar's plan. Yeah, so the stampede went down, and Simba did this adorable scared face, and then it's like Scar, just amazing acting again, telling Mufasa that someone came. Like, just imagine if like that was something like, oh, monkeys in the middle of a stampede. Like, I'll try. It's like, Simba. You know what happens? I really thought it was all dramatic, but I never found it too scary as a kid. I never was one of those people who was crying in that scene where Mufasa's like, we see Mufasa's dead body. Sure, I felt sad, but I was never one of those kids that was crying during it. It just never triggered me. I don't know exactly why. Maybe if the body was like super bloody, or like maybe if Simba went back and had to like tell his mom, maybe then I would have got super upset. Speaking of Simba telling his mom, I felt the like Scar saying, what would your mother say? Which was a bit weird. And also when I first watched that, I thought that Simba could see that Scar was the one who killed Mufasa. So it's like, I got very confused about that scene as a kid. And I was very confused as to how Simba would like blame himself for it. But now as an adult, I completely understand it. It's like because Simba was never properly blamed for anything badly he did, anything he did that was bad, but Mufasa just kind of hid it, like he did with the elephant graveyard stuff, and then suddenly this really bad thing happened, and Simba was actually blamed for it, and it sinked into him that it was all his fault, and he just never had been blamed for anything, and because of that, it just overwhelmed him, and that's what made him want to run away. And I know how that feels when you're like scared, fear, and that guilt that you just run, which is reason why the hyenas actually couldn't get him. Also, I really liked the fact that the hyenas chased after him. As a kid, I thought that Scar was just like a bit lazy and didn't actually want to brutally kill his own nephew, because like he kind of knows that it's Mufasa's fault, and also because it would get his scent, the scent of Simba on him, and he also had his blood on his paws. I mean, I guess you can wash off the blood, but you know what I mean. It'd be really obvious that Scar was the one who killed him if Scar did kill Simba. So I really like the fact that the hyenas were the ones who let him go and that Mufasa didn't know that. And then we get like the bit where Scar's like, great and glorious butcher, when lions and hyenas come together, blah blah blah. And that's the only scene we get of them for a very long time, of Scar and his pride and Scar as king. And I felt like I needed more, so like I watched this scene a lot. And like you can tell that Nala's sad that Scar's left, because she's like, Nala's sad that Mufasa and Simba are dead, especially Simba, and because she's like crying, and you can tell that the whole pride is sad. And Scar is then a very good actor, doesn't hold anything back. That was another time when I found it really confusing that there were no other cubs, there was just Nala and Simba, and now not even Simba. I just found that really confusing. And also the fact that, you know, Zazu got knocked out. I mean, Scar probably just said something like, oh, a rock hit you, or something like that, because Zazu didn't actually see him get knocked out, he just got knocked out, and it would have been obvious that, you know, that he got banged really hard and he would have woken up on that rock. Wouldn't have just gone, oh, now I'm here. Okay, flap, flap, flap. But I feel like they should have done a scene where they, like, explained why Zazu wasn't just, like, questioning, like, how he got there. And the two ideas that I have is either Scar just covered it up and said, well, you got hit by a rock or something, or Zazu did see, and Zazu kind of just had to, and Zazu just turned on to Scar's side because Zazu was getting really badly treated by Simba and Mufasa, and Scar kind of convinced him to be on his side, and then and he understood what Scar was saying, and also Scar threatened that if he didn't join with him, then he would eat him. So that's the two headcanons that I have about that. The scene after that is when Simba's just walking through the desert. We don't really get too much of him actually walking through the desert, we just kind of see him like lying on the ground, so I feel like we should have got some more of him walking through the desert, how he got that far. Like we see in the other scene when he goes back, this whole thing of him running with the special leg effect, and I really want to know how a little cub did all of that. But it definitely makes sense that he would be absolutely tired out and without any water. And then we get introduced to Timon and Pumbaa. They are great characters, but not the best people. They don't have the best ideas in life. They're just so settled back that they just don't know like what's important in life. They're just like, yep, have fun, be best friends, woohoo. And yeah, and it's good that they woke up Simba and then saved his life. And I just, as a kid, I'm just like, when he says no, when the world turns you back on you, you turn your back on the world. When I heard that line as a kid, I thought that meant like be angry at the world, and I'm like, what? And then they sing Hakuna Matata, and I'm like, what happened to being angry at the world? What are you trying to explain here? And so I got really confused about that as a kid. And Hakuna Matata is good. It's a good song, it's catchy, and it's also, it's a good message to not worry about everything, but you do need to learn from your mistakes. and you can't just say Hakuna Matata about everything. You can say Hakuna Matata when, I don't know, when you make this perfect burrito and you bite into it and then it falls apart because there's too much inside it. That's when you say Hakuna Matata, not when your dad just died. That's something that you really need to deal with. And because he didn't deal with it and pushed it down, it really didn't go well for him. And then we just get this whole song of him just turning into an adult. And we don't get any teenage scenes from him or from Nala. We don't know what happened in the jungle in between childhood and adulthood for him. Like, we saw that he was able to eat grubs and that he found them yummy, and we saw that that he was happy, I guess, because he was singing at the end of it. But we saw nothing in between, and so it was just this whole, and I hate how Disney does that, and I really wanted to know what teenage Simba was like and what it was like for Timon and Pumbaa to raise him, because, you know, you don't just become pals just like that. And then there was no scenes with Nala and all the other lions and the other pride. It was just like, there was nothing. And it was really sad because you didn't get to see how that land went from beautiful and luscious and green, full of food, to all the animals being starved and the prides leaving. I feel like they should have had something there, especially something from Nala's childhood, how she went from a spunky, fun little cub to Nala, who was like, you know, headstrong, calm, and determined, and was like this hero. And the same thing with Simba. He went from this complete brat to this pretty laid-back guy who didn't really care about anything. And that made sense for him to turn from this to that. He wasn't getting as spoilt, but then at the same time he wasn't, there wasn't much opportunity for him to get in trouble anymore. And so it makes sense how he changed, but I kind of wanted to see those changes. And for Nala, the changes don't make sense unless you just see the little scenes, which I understand why they're deleted, but they are great scenes. They're really dramatic and they really add some depth to the movie, so Google them. And then we finally get a scene with Scar and what's happening over in the Pride Lands, which no longer look like the Pride Lands. Now they look just like the elephant graveyard. There are bones everywhere. They set the mood perfectly with Zazu singing his really grumpy song. You can see that even Scar isn't happy with what's happening, and that but he is blaming everyone else. I think deep down inside he does know that he made a mistake, but he just keeps blaming everyone else. He's like, oh, it's the lionesses, it's the hyenas, it's the lionesses aren't doing their job. And he feels really angry because he doesn't want to leave Pride Rock. He doesn't want to fail as a king. He wants to get through this, but he can already tell that he does kind of need to move, but he doesn't want to. And just that, and he wants to be the king, and he never wants to be bossed around. And the coconut song is hilarious. And the Zazu was actually funny in this scene. It's a small world after all, that was actually funny. And then seeing how even the hyenas are even more unhappy than when Mufasa was king just shows just how evil Scar truly was. And then we see like Simba and Timon and Pumbaa just calming down and relaxing, looking up at the stars, having a nice conversation. And then there's the whole thing where you can see that Simba still has that guilt from all those years ago and it's still bothering him. And then you see his a bit of his DNA or something that touched him, maybe. We're not exactly sure what the dust is, but the dust blow off and over to Rafiki. Just like, this is interesting dust. And I like how he just slowly works it out. He's just like, Simba, and then he's just so happy, and he knows exactly what to do. And he's like, and I love Rafiki. He's just so fun, and that's so cool. And then we get the scene of Timon and Pumbaa and Simba singing. I don't know. It's just Timon and Pumbaa singing "The Lion Sleeps Tonight." I liked how in the remake they made that into an actual song that's like in the soundtrack, but it made sense for them to be singing it. Same time, it didn't, because there are no lions in that jungle. Well, they didn't know there was, and they were not sleeping. But I guess the fact of that song was that there's no worries. And it's another song where it's like, even though this is a jungle, all the predators are sleeping, which makes sense for them. And then Nala turns up and she just looks ferocious, which makes sense. She must have been starved for ages, especially if you'd seen that deleted scene. She was like cast out and, you know, couldn't come back. And so she just like, food, yummy, yummy, yummy. And so she goes and she tries to get Pumbaa, but then when Simba pins, tries to pin her and tries to get her, and then she pins him, she's like, no, I'm hungry. And she's just like so angry and so hangry. And then when he says her name, she's like so confused. And I love that confused face of just being like, what? Because like there's no other male lions that she knows which looks like that at all. Like there's Mufasa, which she knows he's not Mufasa, and then, you know, Simba's dead, and that's like it. She has absolutely no idea who this lion is, and she just does, the realization just goes so slow, and then she's like, and just their reactions and their excitement and how happy they both are, it's just like, that's totally how that would happen in real life. It's so cool. And then Timon and Pumbaa just like, what's going on? Now you're like best friends with this guy who's about to eat your best friend? Like that's never solved. It was just like, you may have just been want to eat me, but like, that's cool. I mean, Timon makes a understandable reaction, and Simba is like, he just saw his best friend and he's never seen for a long time, so that makes sense. But Pumbaa's just like, you're the king. Cool. And I love how the interaction is just so slow, they don't rush it, and it's just this whole building up thing. And then they do the Can You Feel the Love Tonight? And if it was like not an animal, then I would be like really like upset that they fall in love just like that. But because I know that happens in real life, that they just fall in love just like that. And the song is beautiful. It is beautiful, but as a child, I always found that there wasn't enough interesting stuff. It was just kind of them walking with beautiful setting. It makes sense for an animation point of view. It's nice to look at, but not enough to think about and interact with as a kid. Now I'm like, meh. But it is really beautiful. It's really romantic, and it's a really nice, loving scene that you get. And then you get the argument scene when like she actually asks what he's doing. And I was kind of like wondering why they didn't already ask that question. Like, I feel like that would be what I would go to first. But I guess they were just still kind of so happy to see each other. And I guess she didn't want to rush it, which was, I guess, a smart move from her. And then it makes sense that she got angry at him because, you know, it's his responsibility and he didn't take on his responsibility, but he still has this whole thing of guilt on his shoulders, and he's so like, what should I do? And he just doesn't want to accept what's happened because he can't change it, but he also he just doesn't want to accept it. And so he just full on like runs away and just being like angry and just trying to Hakuna Matata it out. Like, he doesn't know what to do, what to think, because Hakuna Matata isn't working, and she makes some good points, but he feels like he just can't do it, and he just still feels this weight of guilt. And then Rafiki turns up. He's just so funny. Seriously, like, Rafiki is one of my favourite characters. He's hilarious, and he talks to Simba. And I kind of felt bad for Simba when like, Rafiki told Simba that his dad was alive, and Simba just, like, gets excited, and then his dad isn't technically alive, he just lives inside him, but then, like, the whole clouds and everything, and then, and it's really dramatic how, when Mufasa comes out of the clouds, he's just like, remember who you are. And that's, that was really cool. It was a really good scene, and it was one thing that, Mufasa did kind of know. He did know that he had the responsibility of being king, and it was great that he could remind Simba that. And I just loved how Rafiki was like, the weather, huh? And then, and my favourite line, my favourite motto thing from the whole of Lion King is definitely, when Rafiki hits him on the head, and then he's like, hey, what was that for? He's like, it doesn't matter, it's in the past. It's like, yeah, but it still hurts. Oh, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you either run from it or learn from it. See? So what are you going to do? I love that line. Whenever anyone makes a mistake, I always pull out the line. Mum's like, well, that's one way of being. Or just like, it's not the right time. But I just love that line. I pull it out all the time. And then Simba goes back. And then we get that scene of Nala and Timon and Pumbaa's face just like, where is Simba? And they're like, we don't know. I thought she was with you. And it's like, he was, and now he's not. It's just so funny to see their reactions, because like Timon, I think, still thinks he's gonna eat them. It's so funny. And then Rafiki, he's just like, the king has returned. And I was like, yay! And then Simba goes back into a dramatic scene of him going back in the sand. I was just kind of just like, yep, he's going back in the desert, which we never saw at the beginning. Made me a little bit confused as a kid. And then, like, I feel like we should have seen, like, Nala behind him or something a little bit too. And then he gets there, and just the way he's just so hesitant and so surprised about how the Pride Lands has changed, how there are bones everywhere, there's no luscious grass or any animals in sight. And that is until Nala comes up and she's like, yeah, it's pretty bad. And then we see how Timon and Pumbaa, how like the best thing about them is that they're noble. Like, despite the fact that they're lazy and haven't really done that many good things in life, that they always stick with their friends no matter what they're going through, and no matter like how pointless it may seem to them. And I really liked that and then they go off and they distract the hyenas with the hilarious, but also really weird and really suspicious whole dance, the hula dance. Like, I know that some people say that wouldn't the hyenas get suspicious, but at this point they are absolutely starving, like even more starving than when Mufasa was king. So they do not care. They're just like, food. And then we see the whole scene with Scar like getting really angry at Sarabi, and if there's any scene that I was scared of as a kid, that was definitely up there. It was pretty dramatic. It's pretty crazy. And then Simba just turns up right then, and it's just so dramatic and so cool, and at this point Scar is just desperate. At first he's just like, how'd you get here? And, like, trying to still be acting, but then he starts digging into Simba's guilt, and Simba starts getting scared, but he does accept it, and he does admit it and own up to his own responsibilities. But then Scar starts pinning him, like, he starts backing him up against the edge of the cliff with all the hyenas, and I never understood, and still don't really understand, why Nala and Sarabi and the rest of them didn't do anything about that. They just watched. I mean, sure that he just revealed that he was responsible for Mufasa's death, but he said it was an accident, clearly. I mean, they know that he wouldn't do that on purpose. And so there is absolutely no reason to just stand there going, Simba, it's like, do something, girl. Why didn't you attack? Like, before he gets, like, Scar to admit it. And then he does get Scar to admit it. And it's just great to see Simba getting all that guilt off his shoulder, and it's just all just dramatic fight, and the fight scene is great with the fire, and the lioness is really doing the thing, and it's really good, and you can see that they did a lot of work into it. Some things like Pumbaa getting angry at being called a pig, that was just kind of a bit random. Like, I much preferred in number 2 where they used his strength as a weapon instead of just instead of the first one. That they didn't really show his his battle was very confusing. Pumbaa and Timon was a bit confusing. And then Simba and Scar's one-on-one thing, and you can tell Scar's would have won, but then Simba does a last little smart thing, and then he goes into the fire, and then you just see how hungry and desperate the hyenas are. I did not like how the hyenas really tried to kill him, because I think they should have worked out that he was just saying that to get Simba off his back. I did not like that, but my headcanon is that they just needed an excuse to eat something, and that they were just angry at him, felt like Scar had betrayed them because they didn't have any food. They had even less food than when Mufasa was king, and they just feel angry and super hungry, and just, they got an excuse, bam, they needed something to eat, and therefore they ate him. But it is still very gruesome, and and then they got burnt alive in the fire. I feel like they should have been like, hey, wait, there's a fire, we should run. Even though you're starving, you're going to notice that there's a fire that's about to burn you to death. And then there's the whole dramatic thing about Simba going up the rock. And it is dramatic and it's good, but I kind of found it very slow slow, and they didn't say anything, and it made sense because it's all dramatic and it's slow, but like, the story isn't all about Simba, come on. But he does take up his responsibility, gets up onto the rock and roars, and then we fast forward to like 1 year where all the grass is back, and they show how the circle of life continues, and how thanks to Simba now they can go back into the routine of getting a new cub, and all the animals being back, and the pride being happy, and the luscious green grass, and then it ends. So that's the movie. And here are my thoughts overall. Two main favourite characters of this movie are definitely Nala and Rafiki. They are great. I didn't really like the random things about like Pumbaa not being like called a pig, the whole what would your mother think, and there were a lot of lion puns which got very tiring, and the characters like Zazu were a bit annoying, and the dramatic scenes I found personally a bit boring. Yeah, and a lot of the things can be confusing for kids, like when Zazu was knocked out, the fact that they needed to make it more clear that Simba couldn't see that Scar killed his dad. You know, like the whole circle of life idea. A lot of that could have been explained a bit more, should have been explained a bit more, but wasn't. I really wanted to see some in-between scenes of Simba and Nala, like teenagers or like young, like, I want to say junior high, but that doesn't make sense for lions, but you know what I mean. I just want to see how they went from, you know, little cubs to adults and how they changed, and also like what it was like when in the Pride Lands, and how they got so bad, and how that worked, because like it makes sense that the animals moved on because they kept getting eaten and couldn't live there, but also it doesn't make sense about why the grass was all gone. It should have been like overgrown, so they should have explained it a little bit more, and I felt like there was just like this big gap. But it is a very good movie. Its message of responsibility is a very strong one, and it's very good. The characters are great. Scar is definitely my favourite Disney villain ever of all time, and probably they'll never ever be able to top it, although they have gotten pretty close, especially with like Thanos and stuff. Now that Disney is expanding like crazy, but Scar will always be up there for me. And yeah, it's just a really good movie, and yeah. But I think it is overpraised a bit, and like there is a lot of things missing, but it's a really good movie. It's really interesting. Characters are really great. The world is really good, and I really enjoy Lion King. Hence this channel. So if you want to watch more Lion King videos, click here or here. If you like this video, then like it. If you want to subscribe, then subscribe right where my face is, because there will be a subscribe thing. Just click there. Comment down below about what you think I should change about my channel, what more movies you want to see, if you like the ones that you can see here, or if you like these sort of videos, you want me to do more, and like just comment down below anything at all, anything I can improve on. What's your favourite Lion King 1 character? You know, just go. tell me your thoughts. And I'll see you guys next time. We talk about the king of the non-jungle. That's a horrible go out. I need to think of a line for signing out. Bye.